One general theme that everybody can kind of latch onto is this search for connection, this search for family, and that's something that the 24 players on the team found amongst each other. I met them in person for the first time in January 2017, and almost immediately there was just a certain kind of magnetism that I had being around the team. I knew just learning more about their stories and learning more in depth about the South Korean national players, their backgrounds, that there was more to be told. One player in particular immediately kind of drew me in was Han Soo-jin. And she was one of the older players on the team, and she was an accomplished concert pianist. But she also had this kind of deep down love and desire towards hockey. And that always stuck with her, and eventually she quit her career as a pianist to play hockey. That was the kind of a decision that did not please her family very much. It actually caused a lot of tension with her and her parents to give up this, what seemed like a path on a very successful career in the art, to play a sport that nobody even knows about in South Korea. Kim Jong-un appears on North Korean state-run television and really shocks the world because he says, "I would like to send North Korean athletes to the 2018 Olympics, which are happening just a month away in South Korea." And this caught everyone off guard, in particular the South Korean government. It even caught many in America, by surprise, just because what had been going on in the months before that. And there were missile tests and this really heightened worry, not only on the Korean peninsula, but I think around the world, that will this lead to conflict? They had never shown any inclination of being a part of the Olympics or wanting to be a part of any kind of peaceful process. Among countries that are considered world leaders, France and the United States, for example, there were serious concerns about sending their athletes to the Olympic Games just weeks before the opening ceremony. One of the marquee moments was the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, where President Moon Jae-in of South Korea was going to be attending. And then you had not Kim Jong-un, but almost equally as important, his sister Kim Yo-jong was in attendance. When Kim Jong-un greets her in the press box and shakes her hand, that's a huge moment and image that will be sent around the world and showing this is what we were striving for, this idea of the Peace Olympics. Even though nothing substantial came out of those events, people saw it as a very symbolic gesture, and I think at least for Koreans and those Koreans who do yearn for unification, it gave them a kind of hope that they just hadn't had in a really long time. So after the games end, the North Korean players go back to North Korea. When the two sides said goodbye, that turned out to be a very emotional moment, which the South Koreans didn't think was going to happen. Over the month that they were together, they did grow close and form genuine relationships. And then when the two teams split apart, the South Koreans knew that they were likely never going to see them again. So there was a little bit of resentment from that, being put in this situation and forming bonds and relationships with people who you compete with, you cry with, you share a locker room with, and then basically they're pulled away from you, and you know that your chances of ever running into them again are slim to none. Many of the players had long wondered, once the Olympics are over, are we just going to be discarded completely because no one's going to really care about women's hockey anymore? And so the players had this burning desire to not only keep playing and get what was owed to them, but to save their sport. They wanted to see the sport grow and continue on to get to a point where South Korea could qualify on its own for future Olympic Games. So the team threatened to boycott. That put the South Korean government, the Korea Ice Hockey Association, in a very tough situation, I believe. believe, because you can't not have the team show up to the second most important tournament right after the Olympics when everyone still has this idea of unification. But moving to Korea, the import players living there, being around Korean women, learning about the history and the culture, it gave them something that they could never kind of pick up while living here. And in return, you had the South Korean players who always knew that they were looked down upon, seen very low in society, not only for being ice hockey players, but for being women in South Korea, and wondering what their future was, what their lives, how they would play out. And then meeting the imports who allowed them to think, cultivate more progressive trains of thought, and being able to take stands on issues that they wouldn't have done without them, it gave them something in their lives that was missing as well.